July 2, 1943, Castelvetrano Airfield, Sicily. The Mediterranean flickered beneath the midday sun, heat shimmering over runways blasted by weeks of bombing. High above, the thin whine of an Allison engine cut through the clouds. A P-40 Warhawk dropped out of the sky like a hawk on prey. The German in his Focke-Wulf 190 felt the shock before he understood it. A line of orange sparks leapt across his wing. The smell of burning oil filled the cockpit, and then a burst of tracers tore through the fuselage. The fighter spun into the Sicilian hills, exploding in a trail of black smoke. At 22 years old, First Lieutenant Charles Blakesley Hall, a mechanic's son from Brazil, Indiana, had done what the Nazi creed decreed impossible. A black pilot had defeated Germany's best. That afternoon, crews painted a small black swastika under the canopy of Hall's P-40. It was the first of 112 enemy aircraft that would fall to the men the Germans would come to call Schwarz-Vogelmenschen, the Black Birdmen. Ideology had met aviation fuel and lost. In Hitler's Germany, race dictated destiny. Black people were branded Untermensch, unfit for intellect or bravery. Yet within 2 years 992 pilots trained at Tuskegee Army Airfield would prove otherwise, rewriting the mathematics of aerial warfare, 15,000 missions, 1,578 combat sorties, 112 kills in the air, and a bomber escort loss rate unmatched across the U.S. Army Air Forces. Their victories forced even Nazi propagandists to confront the bankruptcy of their own theories. But the path to those crimson-tailed triumphs began in a country that doubted its own conscience. In 1925, the U.S. Army War College wrote an official judgment titled Employment of Negro Manpower in War. Its conclusion read like a sentence. Compared with the white man, he is admittedly of inferior mentality, inherently weak in character. Decades of policy were built on that single poisonous idea, but pioneers were already breaking the ceiling. Eugene Bullard, who America barred from its cockpit, crossed the Atlantic and flew for France in 1917. Bessie Coleman earned her license in Paris in 1921, performing stunts back home to prove that wings had no color. By the 1930s, the Coffey School of Aeronautics in Chicago trained scores of black pilots, sometimes in borrowed fields outside city limits because local airports refused them space. Each takeoff was both progress and protest. As Europe slid toward war, civil rights leaders raised their own offensive. Walter White of the NAACP, labor firebrand A. Philip Randolph, and Judge William H. Hasty lobbied Congress, accusing the War Department of hypocrisy. Black newspapers shouted the same question across front pages. How can America fight for democracy abroad while denying it at home? Their voices battered Washington until, in 1939, Public Law 18 finally sneaked through the Senate. It ordered flight instruction for Negro air pilots. It wasn't equality, only a segregated token, but it cracked open the hangar doors. When Roosevelt ran for a third term in 1940, he needed black votes from Chicago, Detroit, and New York. Political arithmetic met moral reality. On January 16, 1941, the War Department announced formation of the 99th Pursuit Squadron, an all-black unit based at Tuskegee, Alabama. Officials whispered the same word in Washington: experiment. Leading it was Captain Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., son of America's first black general. At West Point, no one had spoken to him for 4 years except for issuing orders. Yet his dignity never cracked. Now he would lead 26 pilots, proving an entire race's worth. Tuskegee wasn't luxurious. Recruits trained on muddy strips shared with livestock. Airfields shook as worn P-40s lifted off under Alabama heat. Mechanics slept in tents beside the runways. And still they came, hundreds of volunteers desperate to prove the sky was wide enough for everyone. In April 1943, the 99th arrived in Tunisia attached to Colonel William Momeyer's 33rd Fighter Group. Momeyer openly doubted them. He assigned slow patrols and coastal sweeps, telling other officers he wanted no headlines of disaster. Their first real test came June 2nd over Pantelleria Island. Germans appeared out of clouds, but the Tuskegee pilots held perfect formation around the bombers. No losses, no panic. They earned grudging respect, but still no glory. A month later, Charles Hall's Sicily kill changed everything. When his wheels touched the runway, ground crews danced on oil-stained concrete. The airfield erupted in cheers that rippled through every segregated canteen across North Africa. Pride, after years of insult, finally had proof. Despite success, prejudice fought back. By January 1944, Momeyer sent Washington a scathing report: "The squadron lacks aggressiveness." General Hap Arnold prepared to scrap the program. Then came Anzio. January 27, 1944, 15 P-40S of the 99th met swarms of Focke-Wulfs over the beachhead. They fired short, disciplined bursts at close range, turning impossible odds into triumph. Within 48 hours, the Tuskegee pilots destroyed up to 13 enemy aircraft while losing none. Hap Arnold demanded a review comparing all P-40 units. The result: the 99th performed as well as its white counterparts. The experiment wasn't a charity after all, it was an asset. For their next mission, they would need new machines and a new identity. In May 1944, the 99th merged with the 100th, 301st, and 302nd Squadrons to form the 332nd Fighter Group. At Ramitelli Airfield, Italy, Davis gathered his men beneath the silver wings of P-51 Mustangs. "Our job," he said, "isn't to be heroes chasing kills. Our job is to bring the bombers home." Soon each P-51 was painted crimson from spinner to tail, a choice born partly from a simple paint surplus and partly from pride. Against the cold blue of altitude, those scarlet tails blazed like warnings. Protection had arrived. To bomber crews, they became talismans. "Get the red tails," they said. "They never leave you." July 18, 1944, over southern Germany, the Red Tails met their hardest fight yet. Colonel Davis led 66 Mustangs to rendezvous with bombers heading for Memmingen. The bombers came late. Davis kept his group circling, extending the mission deep into enemy airspace, a decision no commander made lightly. Then the Luftwaffe pounced. 100 fighters dropped from above like dark birds. Radios exploded with shouts. "Bandits, 3 o'clock. Break! Break hard left." Machine guns flashed sunlight across the clouds. 15 bombers fell. 3 Red Tails were lost: Lieutenants Robert Hutton, Wellington Irving, and Alfred Brown. Critics called it failure. Analysts disagreed. The 332nd had arrived already surrounded and still saved most of the formation. Courage had become routine. March 24, 1945, Berlin. The Nazis unleashed their last miracle weapon, the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first jet fighter, capable of 540 miles per hour. That morning, Colonel Davis led 43 Mustangs on a 1,600-mile round trip to escort bombers striking the Daimler-Benz tank plant. Jets rose to intercept, their speed a blur. Lieutenant Roscoe Brown remembered seeing silver comets with fire coming from their tails. He executed a brilliant counter move, diving away then turning into their blind spots. His burst found its target. A jet broke apart and spiraled down in flames. Lieutenant Earl Lane scored an impossible 2,000-yard deflection shot using the new K-14 gun sight, dropping a second Me-262. Lieutenant Charles Brantley claimed a third. 3 jets in one day, a record unmatched by any group in the Army Air Forces. For that mission, the Red Tails received a Distinguished Unit citation. The sky over Berlin proved what Tuskegee had always known: skill and discipline are colorblind. 32 Tuskegee pilots became prisoners of war. Among them, Lieutenant Alexander Jefferson, shot down on his 19th mission. When captured, the German interrogator cited Jefferson's Detroit address, his parents' occupations, even his school. "Your father is a teacher," the man smirked. "The Reich knows everything." Inside Stalag Luft 3, Jefferson found himself treated like any other American officer. White POWs from bomber crews approached him to offer thanks. They had once flown beneath Red Tails. "The irony," Jefferson said later, "was that I was treated more fairly in a Nazi camp than in my own country." When he returned home, military police segregated the disembarkation line by color. Freedom was still incomplete. To the crews of the B-17S and B-24S, Red tails were guardian spirits. Reports spread that when crimson tails appeared in formation, enemy fighters dispersed. Pilots wagged their wings in greeting. Bomber gunners called them our angels. Statistically, the title was earned. Dr. Daniel Hallman's research showed bomber loss rates under red tail escort averaged 27 aircraft versus 46 for all others. The 332nd flew 179 escort missions, often the longest and most dangerous in Europe, and still returned an unmatched safety record. Their discipline born at Tuskegee paid dividends. Mechanics worked in mud pits with scrap tools to keep Mustangs running. Their readiness rates equaled better supplied units. Even bombing raids on Ramitelli could not stop them. Ground crews rolled burning aircraft away from fuel dumps as bombs fell. They saved planes with their hands as often as pilots did with guns. Tuskegee's cadet program was a crucible. 300 hours in the air versus 200 for white trainees. A 60% washout rate. Commandant Noel Parrish called them super-selected. Their journey through aircraft types traced America's own technological rise, from hand-me-down P-40S to gleaming P-51DS built around the British-designed Merlin engine. The Mustang could fly 1,600 miles with drop tanks, carry 650 caliber guns, and outrun almost anything. In their hands, it became not just a fighter but an argument made of aluminum and courage. Colonel Davis once told his squadron, "Anyone can shoot down a fighter if he abandons his post. It takes discipline to stay when the enemy runs." That ethic defined them. The Red Tails fought two wars, against fascism in Europe and against racism in America, and their victories in the air carried moral payloads far heavier than bombs. By 1945, the Luftwaffe knew exactly who they were. Top aces warned new pilots to watch for the Red Tails because they never quit. Meanwhile, many Americans back home still didn't know black pilots existed, their accomplishments buried behind bureaucratic walls. But pride needs no press release. Legacy would speak later. When victory was won in Europe, other units marched under confetti. The 332nd quietly packed gear. Segregation orders still stood. Many veterans returned to closed restaurants and segregated train cars. Lee Archer, credited with 4 kills, later said dryly, "No one believed me anyway, but their numbers spoke for them in language even bigotry could read." Those statistics, burned into official records, helped shape Truman's Executive Order 9981 in 1948, ending segregation in the armed forces. Benjamin Davis rose to brigadier general, his father's rank, and then beyond. Recognition was slow. It arrived finally in 2007 when President George W. Bush presented the Congressional Gold Medal to the Tuskegee Airmen. 300 survivors stood beneath the Capitol dome as applause rolled like distant thunder. Many wore red ties in honor of their tails. Their salute to the nation was steady and wordless. For once, America was listening. Their victory did not end with V-Day. The integration they sparked reshaped military aviation through Korea, Vietnam, and beyond. Schools that once excluded them now carry their name. Air Force bases display their insignia in glass cases. Every generation of pilots learns what those red tails meant. Discipline over ego, duty over credit, skill over stereotype. History often summarizes them in numbers: 112 aerial victories, 179 escort missions, 96 distinguished flying crosses, but their real achievement was moral as well as military. They defeated Hitler's racism and America's doubt in one campaign. Roscoe Brown said it best, "We didn't just fight the Germans. We fought ignorance, prejudice, and hatred, and we won all three." From the moment Charles Hall pulled the trigger over Sicily to the day Benjamin Davis pinned stars on his uniform, the Tuskegee Airmen rewrote what was possible. Their red-tailed contrails still cut across history, proof that courage needs no color and that discipline, once given a chance to fly, can change a nation.